I am in pain. I am seriously, my head hurts to tell you this next story. The Girl Scouts are now being sued for having heavy metals in their cookies. Okay. If you missed our story from last week, there is an advocacy group, so called, that moms across America paid a lab to do testing last year on Girl Scout cookies. And they found that all the cookies had 4 out of 5 toxic heavy metals. The problem here is they revealed their findings without context. So they compared findings of their cookies to the EPA standards for water. Okay. They weren't testing water, they were testing cookies. And the levels that are allowed in water is different than what's allowed in food. We also went over a bunch of other foods that honestly, any food in the food chain is going to have trace amounts of what is it? Glyphosate,
Glyphosate's the
cadmium, lead. There was a ton of them. But the kicker here is that the plaintiff, Miss Amy Mayo, she filed a class action complaint on Monday, March 10th, asking for $5 million from Girl Scouts and their cookie manufacturers. And in the suit, it claims that the Girl Scouts produce and distribute products which were contaminated with dangerous heavy metals, including aluminum, arsenic, cadmium, lead, mercury, and pesticides, including glyphosate. Here's the problem. They are basically saying that these studies' test results are accurate, which they are accurate as to what they found, but the videos on social media like TikTok and Facebook did not put their findings in context. The context here is that it's such trace amounts, similar to what you would find on any food product that's basically plant based. If it grew in soil, it's going to have these trace, contaminants. And we found, what was it? Another thing that put it into context, that a 66-pound child would have to eat 9,000 cookies in one day just
okay.
to have enough possible contaminants to be toxic. So the average person is not going to be eating 9,000 cookies a day, sure as heck not more than once. So I feel like this lawsuit is so unfair, is so baseless, and I have so many questions. First question: who the hell is the lawyer that filed this case and doesn't understand the difference between standards for water and the standards for food? Because I feel like if this lawyer was worth a damn, they would not have taken on this case.
No, and I think the problem with the data is it feels very incomplete and very skewed. It's not peer reviewed and it's not independent. It's like
It's
all of
biased.
those. Yeah, it's biased. It's biased data. And so when you have a biased study, you're not going to get clear unmitigated data. You're coming from a point of view on this, right? So realistically, to offer true findings for this, it's going to come down to either side of the lawsuit doing a fully independent study, right? And like one, they're not going to be able to recreate the data because they used last year's stock on
Yeah.
the
And I don't think there's a big warehouse of Girl Scout cookies
no.
from, different vintage years that they can
God.
go pull from.
Right, exactly. I mean, they can pull I'm sure that there's some level of data that already exists just because from a safety standards, because they have to test for things like batch test for things like E. coli and stuff like that. Because if there's an issue, they need to be able to recognize it. So there's batch testing that's done. But when it comes to that level of testing, that's probably not something that's done on a regular basis, you know?
Yeah.
So we're looking at you'd have to do an independent study and have to use the current batch of cookies. And then are they then going to get railroaded into another direction because they're unable to produce the data?
Reproduce
Yeah,
same results.
right.
But then, so I feel like this is really a baseless lawsuit, but when you file a lawsuit against a company, even a nonprofit like the Girl Scouts of America, they have to then pay their lawyers to fight it, to
Yeah,
get it dismissed. So who's going to pay the legal fees here? Because if the case doesn't actually go to court, it just ends up being motions and pretrial type paperwork.
yeah,
There won't be a judgment where Miss Mayo has to pay for the legal fees.
right,
So now we're costing the Girl Scouts of America money. This is money that could go towards actual, you know, girls to help them become empowered women. But no, we can't use it for that. Now we have to use that money for legal fees.
right.
And
That's a lot
then
of. Go
it's
ahead.
a lot. And
Yeah,
then now the Girl Scouts are now on the defense. They are now having to explain to the American people that their cookies are perfectly safe. There's nothing wrong with them just because this advocacy group did such a huge smear campaign on social media, and they can't even be held liable for it because they didn't lie about their findings. They just didn't put it into a context where the average American would understand the findings.
yeah. The amount of conversations I've had around this study, and I say study because of how biased
Because
it is pretty like organic conversations that have nothing to do with our fun project here. Like, is more than I anticipated, honestly. I'm like, did you eat 9,000 Girl Scout cookies today? You're fine. Like, that's literally the statement.
well,
It's
okay, so
nuts.
you look at their social following. That's their reach is way more than 1 million people.
Yeah.
Okay. Then it was mentioned on the Joe Rogan podcast. He's the number 1 watched podcast or listened to podcast.
Yeah.
So think of his audience. You're talking millions and millions.
Yep.
Now, I'm not saying that followers of Moms Across America or followers against or followers of Joe Rogan are not smart enough to think for themselves, but I guarantee you the majority of their audience is not then going and fact checking what that information is about. Because if
Well,
you follow somebody and you trust them, you're not necessarily trying to prove them wrong or to find flaws in what they're saying. So I
right.
guarantee you, this audience that has been really, has been put forth this propaganda on,
Yeah.
they are taking it for face value. And then they are going and telling their friends and their family members because it is Girl Scout season. You can't
Yeah.
go anywhere without hitting a Girl Scout cookie. So there's tons of conversations right now, and I'm sure somebody keeps popping up and going, don't buy the Girl Scout cookies, they're toxic.
I know. And then the conversation begins again. I'm like, how many did you eat? Are you alive? Excellent.
Are you
Have you?
eating 9,000 cookies every single day?
We have so many questions if you're eating 9,000 cookies. Like, where
How
did you
are you
get the money?
affording this?
Did you do a title loan? Like, are you pawning jewelry? Like, that's so many cookies a
And
day.
so I suggest that, so even if you don't like Girl Scout cookies,
Yeah.
okay, just go donate $5 to a Girl Scout. Help
Yeah.
them with these legal fees. Help tell other people their cookies are not toxic. Are they expensive? Yes. Are they the tastiest thing on the planet? That's up for debate because I've actually found quite a few Girl Scout dupes that I think are delicious and way cheaper. But I think the integrity of Girl Scouts needs to stay intact. So please go out, either donate or buy. So let us know down below. Had you heard this story before we had mentioned it? And are you telling other people, hey, that information is whack? You have to eat 9,000 cookies in order to even get close to toxicity.